Hey YouTube, Superhero Time is back, and welcome to my review for Gozyuger Episode 5. This is one of the first times in a while I really missed Superhero Time. Don't get me wrong, I obviously enjoy watching it, but sometimes when you have a week off, it's nice not to have to worry about the review aspect of it in terms of just all the image gathering and editing and all that stuff. And that was nice to have a break, but I really did miss watching both shows this week, as Gav has been continuously great, and I've really been enjoying Gozyuger, and this episode was no exception. I mentioned in last time's review how I think that was a necessary step in the right direction. I think the show has been slowly improving, and I think these last two episodes has given it a needed grounding. I really did enjoy the first few episodes. I've been trying to go in with an open mind. I enjoyed the fun and the zaniness. Some was a little too much, but I still enjoyed myself, and it set up some really interesting story and questions. However, there wasn't a lot of grounded feel to the story and the characters. It definitely felt very heightened reality, which again, all Sentai is, but I think you know what I mean. And I think last week's backstory with Kinjiro and then this week's with Sumino really worked well. It did make me wish, in retrospect, that Blue and Yellow would have gotten a sort of similar treatment. They are setting up a bit of a mystery around Blue, which we'll touch on at the end. But just in general, it is kind of weird how Green and Black got this really nice kind of character moment that made them feel real and kind of grounded the show a little bit. I'm sorry, I'm using the word grounded a little bit. Floored. That means something different. Anyway, so it just is kind of weird that we had these nice episodes for them, almost feeling akin to King Oger, where we kind of got an episode introduction for each character, but then you had the first three kind of rush the original three. With Red, I kind of get it, because there's also meant to be a little bit of a mystery around it, but I hope that Blue and Yellow get a little bit more and kind of an episode focus like this, because I think these worked really well. I still prefer Kinjiro overall. I thought it was more a unique story. I still enjoy his character, but I thought this was a really nice focus on her. As we knew her sister was missing, we find out she was a cop that went over the edge, and that's why she had to become a PI working on the case. And she's willing to, do anything necessary to do this, even steal the rings outright from the Rangers. She just swipes them from the Rangers. I kind of liked that because it puts in play that you don't have to necessarily do things by the books officially, meaning villains or something could steal the rings later. Of course she winds up giving them back, but it was a nice little moment. And when Red, also, I forgot to mention this the last few weeks, speaking of Red, every time someone calls out his name as Tono, it reminds me of Shinkenger every time. I've been meaning to say that for every episode review for the last 2 or 3, and every time I'm editing, I'm like, damn it, you forgot to bring up the Tono! Her equivalent here was Jesus. Anyway, so when he's chasing her down for the rings, he sees her pick up this kid who scraped his knee, and that kind of ties in with her story of why she can't transform. It's because she's also upset about the fight between Shoma and Hanto on Gav. She's actually just kind of not upset, but it's because she's kind of at odds with herself, because her goal and wish obviously is to find her sister, but her overall goal as a person is to be kind and to help people, and I guess meddle to a degree. That didn't really work for me the way they tied that in, where the monster of the week's thing was meddling, and she's like, I'm meddling. I'm like, I guess it's more helping. I don't know. I kind of thought about the Revice busybody thing. Regardless though, it's kind of putting her at odds with herself, because she kind of has two goals and wishes, and when she realigns that her overall wish and kind of goal is to help people, she's able to transform. I honestly didn't mind that, because it plays into the wish thing, allowed us to learn a little bit about her, and we got her finally getting to transform. Cool debut fight, and also her ability is to read minds, which we showcased earlier in the episode, where she kind of tricks these two guys on going on a triple date so that she can get information out of them, and one of them ends up becoming the monster. But she also uses that in battle. I also do like that we continue to do ground and Megazord battles at the same time as we debut Green's Mecha in this week's episode. Now, I know it wouldn't work in a way, because you wouldn't be able to have the ground and Mecha fight if you debuted the Rangers Mecha on the same time, but it does kind of bother me that they're not in sync. Black debuting with their own mecha and then Green debuting with his mecha, only because it reminds me a little bit of the way Gotchard did their ability forms, where you would debut an ability form and then he would transform into the previous form from last week's episode to do the finisher. It feels like it's taking away from a debut somehow, I don't know. And now we kind of basically have her working with the team, and even Haru says there is no team, and I do kind of like this dynamic we have here, where they're kind of reluctantly forming a team together. Obviously it lends to some interesting possible stories with probably some betrayals and some allegiances, but of course they're all going to get along at the end. I'll be curious to see how it shakes out at the end. I feel like it's going to be the cliche, they somehow all get their wish, or maybe they'll have to choose one person. They could also go the route of somehow along the way they're able to achieve 4 out of the 5 or 5 out of the 6 when we get our 6 Rangers wishes without using the game, and then one of them is going to be able to use it. I don't know how that'll go, but I do like the dynamic they have here. But now that she's working with them, seemingly they'll be kind of in each other's orbit. I'll be curious how the stuff with the who I'm calling Tokantsu guy shakes out. It looks like next week might wrap up his story of the reoccurring Don Momotaro character, which I don't mind, but I do like the idea of having some of these like previous Reds sort of floating around. And I do hope that we have some more previous returning Reds as other characters, and this is something else I meant to mention when we were talking about the previous Reds, is of course I'd like to see some other Reds and stuff, or some other, we don't even have to be Reds. We could have some characters that were Blue or Yellow Rangers come in and be one of these Reds. And I also don't mind them just being other characters. I guess some of them are other tokusatsu veterans, like someone was like, hey, Dawson, didn't you know the Tokantsu Don Momotaro guys from Ultraman Bebop? I'm like, no. Maybe it's all going to be Toku-related characters? That does seem weird to have somebody from Ultraman or like Garo or something. I hope they're more Sentai-related, but I don't mind having Reds that are just a rando to me. That's nothing to do with Sentai. But I also thought it would be cool. Like I said, you could have like a Blue Ranger or a Six Ranger become one of these Reds. I also think it would be cool if we brought in some villains. Like imagine somebody like one of the Don Brothers villains like Sonoy or something becoming one of the Reds, or like Ryu from Geki Ranger. I think that would be really cool. So I hope it's kind of a mix of kind of randos and then some veteran characters. Also, just speaking of this real quick, speaking of the legendary changes, at the beginning of the episode, she's given the Ryu Soldier ring so she can do the Ryu Soldier change. And it's interesting that instead of doing like the classic Gokaiger gender swap, they just have a male suit actor, which I'm kind of disappointed by, because like part of the fun of the Gokai changes was seeing the gender bent suits, because it was kind of like a what if, and I can't remember, did Dawn Brothers do that? I cannot remember when Oni's sister transformed, did she get a female suit actor? I don't know. I just thought that was weird. The big hook at the end is she's talking about the person that kidnapped her sister, and it was the same guy that killed Honto's mom. I'm just kidding. It was somebody with gray eyes, and then conveniently you have Blue out there with some fans like, I miss your gray eyes, or I've been following you since you had gray eyes. That's highly interesting. This was like, what, 8 years ago? So I'm curious how old he would have had to have been. That's immensely curious. I did not expect that at all. Because right before that scene where they set up Blue to be involved in this, I was curious. I'm like, I wonder if this is just going to be a run-of-the-mill crime that just got her on this story, or is it going to be tied to the villains? I was presuming it would, because it would be kind of boring if it wasn't, although unexpected. Also curious, like, is she going to come in as a villain? That would be a classic Toku thing if she came in as some sort of villain. That was something I wasn't expecting. I'm already really curious about the story and the mythology and how it relates to the rings and the overall Sentai anniversary-ness, but this added another new thing that I really liked. Overall, guys, really enjoyed this episode. I still think last week's was my favorite, but I do really like that the series is progressing and I think continually getting better and giving us more reasons to invest outside of the fun. Don't get me wrong, the new and improved Awesome, for these reviews at least, is enjoying the fun and trying to embrace it, but I do think it's valuable to have story and characters be grounded a little bit so you're more invested. Like, now I like that I'm looking forward to seeing the action and how the Sentai anniversary elements come in, but also I'm curious about mysteries and stuff, so I'm really glad that the show is steadily improving and hopefully is winning a few of you over that were kind of falling off because it was a little bit too silly in the first few episodes. But that's it for my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell to get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.